Yes, it is. No screwing up this time. We can't go back and start over. So here we go. In the famous words of Samuel L. Jackson, hold on to your butts. Hey, as you know, for me, live sports started already about a month or so ago with auto racing going back, getting back on track. And hey, I actually went to a race this past weekend, so all is well in my world. I feel like they've done fairly well. And it's not that big of a surprise. You have a lot of countries that are shutting their borders down to Americans because right now the U.S. is has the highest total cases day in and day out. So it's not that surprising that Canada has come out and said this to the Blue Jays. One, we don't want you coming and going, and two, we don't want other teams coming and going as well. With all the uncertainty going on in the United States, so it makes total sense for me. I feel like obviously the best possible scenario for them is some college opening up saying, hey, we're struggling financially right now because of everything being shut down, so if you pay us X amount of dollars you can use our baseball stadium right here in the US. I could see that potentially happening. COVID. Yeah. Well, no, not just the Yankees, the Braves, the Nationals. Those right there. There's three contenders right off the bat that are going to have to go down there. Oh, and the Rays, by the way, there's four.
Off Chase. And they're gonna have to go in and out of the basically the hotbed of coronavirus. So that's pretty crazy.
Here's my
Um,
solution. I have a solution. End all be all right here. The Toronto Blue Jays temporarily move to Indianapolis and play at Victory Field.
hey,
That is a ballpark that has been named the number one minor league ballpark year after year. It's up to MLB standards. It was actually built to potentially expand to host a Major League Baseball team, to become a Major League team stadium. A matter of fact, a Major League team has played there. We've talked about that before when the Cincinnati Reds came and they played against the Indianapolis Indians in an exhibition game. I'm just saying,
yeah,
the
I mean
the
it's
Vic is open and it's been hosting some baseball here in the past week. So
yeah,
it's a good one. It's
yeah.
it's it's Indiana's not a COVID hotbed right now. So if that were to happen, I would mask up and I would park myself outside that stadium all day, especially when the Red Sox are in
Well,
town. Oh, you
easy.
better believe I'm gonna
We'll
be
get a room in the Marriott. We'll get a room in the JW.
yeah.
I mean that's simple as that.
Yeah, there
Um,
we go.
But no, and also like the thing is too is that there also has been speaking of the Indians. Obviously they're affiliated with the Pirates, and that's another option as well. Is that they've been in talks with possibly PNC Park, which that could work. I mean, I don't know how the schedule works with
That
them
would be
being
tough. I feel
yeah,
like that would be kind of tough.
because you got to kind of you have two teams sharing the same facilities and that kind of thing. So like if something
From
happens.
essentially different bubbles.
Right. Well, because you also have the situation where if, like, if someone, like, let's say Cole Tucker from the Pirates, is diagnosed with coronavirus, then does that mean that the Blue Jays now also? I mean, I would imagine that would cause issues with the Blue Jays now.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things to be worked out. In my opinion, from just kind of a reactionary point of view, I would say Buffalo is your best option
I don't know if it's
because
not up to MLB standards. I mean, if it's going to be like a park that these guys are just going to be hitting home run after home run after home run on fly balls out of there.
well, it's still AAA. I mean, it's not as if
Yeah,
it's
why,
they're not
why
playing at
is
like
it
a
not
high
up to
school.
MLB standards? Why is it not up to MLB
I think
standards?
I read something about the lighting.
Okay,
Like the lighting is not. Yeah, it's not like the. It's not like 220 to the
it's
to
not
the
like they're playing
porch and
on
right.
a wiffle ball field.
Yeah. No, it's still. I still think that the dimensions are not. I mean, because remember they play at Williamsport. I mean, it's one game a year, but they play at Williamsport as well. So I
Well, why
mean,
don't they just play at Williamsport?
That's also a possibility. That's because because originally I was going to say that like, oh well, you don't want to send a team that far away, but then I remembered that you have the Rays in Florida, Rays and
The Marlins,
Marlins also coming from Florida, and so yeah, you don't you either it's you know you either send a team to the hotbed or you go to not MLB standards, and I would see exactly how not close to MLB standards the lighting is because again, AAA still played there, so you
right?
know
They have to play. They need light at night,
yeah, I
unless
don't
they
know.
don't play many night games there. I don't
Right.
know.
I like your Victory Field idea. You also have like the Toledo Mud Hens who have a AAA ballpark.
I'm still surprised that an SEC school has not stepped up and said, "Hey, they can play here." I mean, they're not playing right now. They can't even. They're not even practicing right
Right.
now. So why isn't like a South Carolina or a Georgia stepping up? I mean, that's a great in between right there,
Right.
or
Yeah.
even Clemson. I mean, there's a lot of really good baseball programs down there that have nice baseball facilities. Why I don't. I mean, I don't know. Especially if you could get some money from the Blue Jays to rent out your facility to them. Last time I checked, athletic departments were having to lay people off because of this COVID stuff. So how about get a little bit of a boost that other other departments aren't getting because you just rented out your facility?
Right. Yeah.
But at the same time, they also need to protect themselves to get their students back on campus. So there's just so many different things that you have to think about with this. That's why I think honestly the best bet is a AAA ballpark. And I don't. I mean, I don't know if they feel like they can safely be down in Florida at their spring training facility. By all means, go with that. Go with something you're comfortable with because it's just like playing at home. Someplace that you're comfortable, that you know, and it gives you that advantage rather than going to some different place and the mound feels different, or there's all sorts of things that go into those types of decisions in that comfort zone. So yeah, if you want to go somewhere comfortable, I totally get that, but because you're already going to have to go to Florida several times anyways if you're the Blue Jays, so might as well just hunker down there.
Right. But like you said, you also have, you know, 30. I mean, you're going to at least have 30 more games that are going to involve. I mean, really, that's only like what? Like maybe 3 or 4 extra games per team. So it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, yeah, I could see that. I
And
mean,
it is less like officially less
yeah,
travel
you have three
because if you
teams
have those
centralized.
teams bunched up with each other, it makes the travel portion for other teams a lot easier, especially considering you don't have as much downtime between series now.
Right. Yeah, all good stuff, all fair points. So yeah, I would lean more towards Buffalo, but you make a good point with being familiar with the park and also the fact that everything's closer together. Like if you when the Marlins and Jays play, it's not going to be as far away, like you said. So and when they play the Rays, so I'm with you on that. It'll be interesting to see what they do. Like I said, I've seen PNC floating around, which is weird. Um, and we have our first interaction with chat right now. Pam Collins, Mama Collins, my mom's watching. Hi, mom. What's up? No, she said the mounds are going to be different in away games anyway, which is a fair point. I mean, obviously you have to
Well,
get
that's the thing. They are different in away games. It is a fair point, but when you look at when you're playing at home, that is your comfort zone. So
right,
someplace that you're comfortable. I mean, and that gives you a slight edge because of your comfort zone there.
right.
It's like going on the road. It's not easy to go on the road and play, whereas playing at home or playing someplace that you're comfortable at gives you you don't have that uneasy feeling.
Yeah,
And
and I
especially, I mean, right now, any type of advantage that you can get is a big advantage because you don't have the crowd noise behind you. Now, for a team like the Blue Jays or the Rays, that doesn't really matter. They're used to playing in front of practically nobody, but it still is any type of advantage that you can get like, when you're technically having a home game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've seen some of the games that they've had, some of the Blue Jay games that they've had, and their crowds, no matter how big or small, get pretty ruckus. So they're definitely going to miss that this season. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But before we get into the breakdown of the 2020 MLB season, let's go ahead and get a quick word from Anchor. Google Podcasts and Spotify. If you're on a budget, not only is Anchor completely free of charge, but will also allow you to make money from your podcast and other listenership. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Anchor is everything you need for podcast in one place. So let's go ahead and get into the podcast that's been 4 months in the making, and that is the preview for 2020. And yeah, let's go ahead. Well, I broke it down by region because in case you need a refresh for this season, each team will be playing basically teams from their corresponding, division. So AL East versus NL East, AL Central versus NL Central, AL West versus NL West. So it's kind of
I like it. I kind of like it.
I kind of do too. It makes it like because when I was going through, I was like, man, are some of these teams like it's gonna be tough across the board. It's not balanced like you're used to. I mean, they're gonna it's kind of hard to discern like who's gonna keep beating up on each other and that kind of stuff. I asked on Twitter at Crash Course FM on Twitter, um, who which region you guys out there think is the toughest, and people actually came out and said the Central. My personal view is the West, and we'll get to that here in a second.
I actually think the East.
Yeah, so we're all
We're all
um
across the board here.
yeah, we're all over the place. So let's go ahead and dive right into it here. We'll start with the Eastern region. We'll do East, then you do East B Scott, then I'll do Central. We'll some producing on the fly here, if you will. But so the Eastern region, I kind of broke it down into three categories. You've got contenders, you've got spoilers, so teams that I don't think are really going to make the playoffs, but are also going to be pretty tough to beat. And then you got teams that are gonna, I mean, they may steal a game or two, but you're not really worried about your matchup against them going into the season. And for the East, for me, the contenders, first of all, you got to start with the Yankees. They bring in Garrett Cole. They already have a stacked lineup with Judge, Stanton. They've got Glaber. They've got such a crazy lineup. Aaron Hicks. They are just going to be a powerhouse. They're ready for a deep playoff run. The bullpen, even without it's crazy to think that they've. I don't know if Aroldis Chapman is confirmed if he'll be ready for the beginning of the season or if he'll miss a little bit because he was diagnosed with COVID. But even if they start without Aroldis Chapman, they still have Zach Britton, Adam Ottavino. I mean, this team is stacked across.
They're good.
Yeah, yeah. This is a team that even before, even it doesn't matter if it was 162 games or 60 games like it is. This is a team that is going to make a deep playoff run. No further argument there. They're pretty stacked. Then you've got the Rays, who are coming off of a playoff run last year. Of course, they were beat by the eventual AL champion Astros. But they come in with a pretty good pitching staff of their own. They've got Blake Snell. They've got Charlie Morton. If Glass now can find his magic like he had earlier in the season a year ago, they've got very good arms like that. They brought in Hunter Renfroe. They have Austin Meadows. They have Kevin Kiermaier. They have Willie Adames. They've got a lot of good bats as well. They're a team. They kind of remind me. I don't know if I've made this comparison before, but they kind of remind me of the Indiana Pacers of baseball. Like they don't have really anyone that's just incredible, like an amazing superstar. They don't have a Lindor. They don't have a Gleyber Torres or Giancarlo Stanton, but they have just a lot of good, solid bats and a good pitching staff. And then their bullpen is good to boot. So this is a team that I think is also primed to make a good playoff run. Then on the NL side, you've got the Braves, which some conversation has been made about Freddie Freeman coming down with COVID. How that's kind of taken a toll on his body, so we'll see how long it takes for him to get back to 100% health. But you do have still Ronald Acuna. You've got Ozzy Albies. You've got Marcelo Zuna. You've got all those players there. You've got Dansby Swanson. So they have some good bats for their lineup. They added Cole Hamels in the offseason. They added Will Smith to their bullpen. They went out and improved their team immensely, and I'm really excited to see what they do this season because they're another contender. And then the Nationals, for me, they're kind of fringe contender spoiler, and I'll tell you why. Because part of me said, I've waffled back and forth on how good the Nationals are going to be because I think, on the one hand, I think the Nationals are going to be good in the sense that they've got Max Scherzer, they've got Patrick Corbin, they've got Steven Strasburg, who they just re-signed to a mega deal. They've got bats like Trey Turner, Juan Soto, Victor Robles, Eric Thames. They've got some pretty good bats, but you just had Ryan Zimmerman opt out. Was he a main big force? No, but he's definitely going to be missed. You don't have Rendon anymore. So can you? I mean, can this lineup survive losing two pretty incredible bats 2 years in a row? Obviously, they were fine when Bryce left, but now you lose Rendon too. So how good is that lineup actually going to be? I think the only guy that really super scares you in that lineup is Juan Soto, and the rest, I mean, are good hitters. But how many of those guys scare you if you even if you have your ace on the mound? That's what kind of leads me to kind of have the Nationals as I think they're going to have a good season and contend and be there. Yes, but are they going to be just plug them right back in to the playoff picture like they were last year? Who knows? But then again, they started 19-31 and they came back and shocked the world. Also, that's another thing. Howie Kendrick, I love me some Howie Kendrick, don't get me wrong, but is he going to be able to capture what he had last season also? So there's just a lot of question marks, not so much to where it's talked me off of the Nationals, but just in the standpoint of I just don't I'm leaning towards they're going to be good, but I'm not ready to say like yes, pencil them into the NLDS, pencil them into the NLCS. They're a force to be reckoned with. Then you've got spoiler teams. You've got the Blue Jays who added Hyunjin Ryu, who have bats like Vlad Jr. and Bo Bichette. They're going to be an improved team. They're going to hover around 500. You've got the Red Sox, which even though you're like, yeah, they lost Betts, they don't have Sale, they don't have Price. Their bullpen, I don't even recognize some of the names in their bullpen. And I mean, the only name that I know of are what's his name? Ryan Brazier and Brian Workman. Those are or Brandon Workman. Those are the two names that I know. The rest are just kind of like I'm pretty sure I've had their card at some point in MLB the Show, but beyond that, I'm like I don't know these guys. So we'll see what happens. But I think that I still think that they're going to have a season where they have enough talent where they have JD Martinez, they have Kevin Pillar, they have Rafael Devers, they have Michael Chavis. They're going to win baseball games. They're going to contend in baseball games. It's just a matter of, if their pitching is going to be in line, which that's the big question mark, but I still think they're good enough to take games away from the Yankees, the Rays, the Braves. And then you've got the Mets, who they don't have Noah Syndergaard, but they do have Jacob DeGrom still. So their pitching rotation is still a big question mark, but they have Pete Alonso. They have they have some good bats in their lineup, where I think they can be a spoiler team as well. And then you've got the Phillies, who are just kind of throwing darts at a dartboard, and hoping something sticks. But we'll see. They definitely could have a good season as well. They've got Didi Gregorius. They obviously have JT Realmuto back. They have Aaron Nola. They have Zach Wheeler and the pitching staff. Their bullpen, if they can stay healthy, is pretty solid as well. So with David Robinson and Hector Neris in there, so it'll be interesting to watch. I'm not super sold on them, but we'll see. But I do think they can take games away from the other teams that we mentioned. And then the teams that you really don't have to worry about, in my opinion, the Orioles, the Marlins. You knew that was coming. The Orioles, you're excited. If you're a fan, you're excited for prospects. Possibly that's it. The Marlins are a team that are they penciled in as a loss every time they face the Yankees or every time they face the Braves? No, they're gonna have some entertaining games. They do have a kind of a fun roster, but beyond that, they're not gonna do much of anything. So the Orioles, Marlins, you knew that was coming. They're gonna be in the cellar.
So, you basically hit the nail on the head with this region. I mean, Yankees, Rays, Braves, Nationals, definitely all contenders. Honestly, I think you have potentially, three, maybe even all four teams are World Series contenders. In this season, you just don't know. I mean, what happens if COVID hits one of these teams and just decimates them? We'll see how that goes. The spoilers, I agree with the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays are always just kind of right there. And I know in years past when the Red Sox have been really good and contending for the AL East crown, the Blue Jays have just been kind of a thorn in the side. The Mets can be the same way, and the Phillies. The Phillies, I feel like, are out of these spoiler teams, are one of the teams that have the best chance to bump up to the contenders line. They always just kind of seem to be teetering right there back and forth. And then when I look at the spoilers group as well that I have here, same thing, Blue Jays, Red Sox, Mets, and Phillies, the team that I feel like that has the best chance of possibly dropping down to the cellar would be the Red Sox. I mean, the Red Sox just don't they're pretty decimated right now. I mean, yes, offensively, they're still going to be they still have some firepower there. They did lose Mookie Betts. That's a huge loss for them. But the biggest thing is the fact that going into this season, your ace is essentially Nathan Eovaldi. I mean, that's a tough one. I don't know how you're going to ride that one. Luckily, this is a shortened season, so losing Chris Sale, this season is pretty much the Red Sox as an organization and the fan base just all understand this is a wash of a season. Hopefully, you can get things righted in this next offseason. But they're a team that I could potentially see coming out of the gate and just struggling mightily and falling down into the cellar rather quick.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the Red Sox. You look at their lineup. It kind of, in a way, they're kind of in the same spot as not to spoil what I'm going to say. When we get down to the West, but they kind of remind me of the Rockies. Who knows what their pitching's going to look like, but their lineup's really fun with Benintendi and Bradley and Martinez and Devers and Chavis and all those guys. And I think that they are, because a lot of the teams too, like talking about talking about like the Braves, for instance, like if there's a game where it's because is Eduardo Rodriguez still gonna is he
Oh
is
yeah,
he up to that? Yeah,
Rodriguez is
I was
there,
like, so
but
if it's
I feel like I know the opening day starter is going to be Nate Eovaldi.
yeah, so if it's Eovaldi versus, let's say, for the Braves, Mike Fulton Evans, do I think that's a game that automatically the Red Sox are like, no, we're done, we can't do it?
No, by
But
no.
yeah,
The Red
so
Sox
but
have the firepower to keep them within any game. It's just can that offense keep up for 9 straight innings? Because the Red Sox don't have the depth in the bullpen to go to if their starter gets chased. If he gives up 6 runs in the first 3 innings, you don't have that kind of depth to be able to say, okay. But at the same time, there are some people that are saying that, hey, maybe the Red Sox are now going to go the route that the Rays took for a while and have a short starter and then kind of go starter by committee have a longer reliever that it's I don't know, it's weird. It was kind of weird how they did it, but
like have an
there's some people that
opener.
are saying there's some people that could be the option the Red Sox take this year with their starting lineup, but I don't know. It's tough because they just don't have the depth, and that's something that that's a hole they dug themselves into,
Right.
and they're looking to get out of.
Right. So I mean, they could go to like an opener, like let's say they have Ryan Brazier pitch the first inning, and then they have a few guys in their bullpen that are kind of hybrid, like middle relief guys who can pitch multiple innings. So you could have a situation where if you're facing a team that's heavy, right-handers, you can go with a left-handed reliever to start off the game, then go Eovaldi for 3 or 4 instead of having him go try to ask 6 or 7 out of them. And I mean, Eovaldi's shown flashes. I mean, obviously, you saw what he did in the 2018 postseason, and I think he's still kind of recovering from that. Just being used so much. But we'll see. I mean, I think yeah, they have, and you're going to see this season too. The fact that if a game starts to get out of hand, if the Red Sox are have put up a 5 spot on the Brave starter because it's such a short season, because you're basically it's not we're throwing you into opening day and you get to figure it out. We're throwing you into pennant chase baseball
Right.
essentially, and everybody's tied, and it's time to kind of get going here. So you're gonna have to treat these games as if it's end of the season. You're playing for a playoff spot, and so you may not see a starter for that long, and then some of these bullpens, the Yankees, the Braves bullpens improved. We'll see if the Red Sox can go bullpen for bullpen. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I do think you're right in the fact that they're a fringe seller team, but I think the fact that they have such a good offense is going to keep them in a lot more games. When I looked at the seller teams, like I don't look at the Orioles and Marlins on the same pedestal as I do the Red Sox, and that's
Well, neither
why.
one of those teams have like they don't have that potential power.
Right.
But we'll see if the Red Sox even do. I mean, this is a team that last year struggled with health, and that's not what you want in the middle of a pandemic as a team that can't be healthy.
Right.
It wasn't just like knick-knack injuries. It was like there was guys that were sick. So yeah, it
Yeah.
could be interesting.
It'll be fun to watch for sure.
Watch. All of these predictions we're making now could go be completely washed. Like the Yankees starting pitching staff could one of them come down with COVID, and that entire pitching room is in quarantine and they're having to start Zach Britton. I mean,
right.
You just don't know what could happen this
now
year.
I will say, and this is you saying that just reminded me, they did release today. It's a good sign for starting off, and we'll see, obviously, because everybody's going to have to be moving around and stuff. They did release that, out of all the, I'm pretty sure out of all the tests, like there were no negative, like all of them were, all were negatives. I almost did a Michael Scott and said they were all positive, but apparently in the medical field, positive is a bad thing. No, but yeah, so yeah, all the tests are good from what I've seen. So that's a good sign going into the season as well, for sure. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's one thing could possibly blow up the entire season for anybody, and that's what's so crazy. And
that's when I put out a question then of if your starting pitcher isn't pitching, not scheduled to pitch, do you even have him come to the ballpark?
I'd say no.
I mean, think about it. And if this was like football, and each game you had a different quarterback, you rotated through 5 quarterbacks, would you have your star quarterback come at all if he didn't have to be there?
Well, heck, there's situations in the regular season in a normal year where you wouldn't have if a starter, like let's say, a starter
wasn't pitching like on a road series.
Yeah, let's say like you have a quick 3-game road trip, and the pitch, and you had your ace start the last game of the homestand, and he's going to start the second game into the next homestand. You don't even have him travel, and that's in a normal non-pandemic season. So yeah, I mean, I absolutely think there's going to be stuff like that going on. But let's go ahead and move on to the Central region now. And this is a whole, another level of cluster as far as every region is just going to have intricacies, which is crazy. So contenders, you got the Twins. The Twins have done a lot of good things this offseason. They brought in Josh Donaldson. That's injected into a lineup that already has Max Kepler, that already has Miguel Sano, that already has all these good bats in the lineup. Byron Buxton is going to, I think, miss the start of the season, but he's going to be inserted at some point. You've got a lot of good bats in that lineup, and that's not to mention they just traded for Kenta Maeda, so they have Kenta Maeda to go along with Jose Barrios. To go with Rich Hill is in that rotation now. So we'll see how he adjusts to the AL because he's been with the Dodgers now for the last few years. They have a bullpen that's scary. You have Trevor May, down there in the bullpen, who's going to be, tough. You've got Sergio Romo, who's tough down there in the bullpen, who's been around the block a few times, but still is pitching pretty well. So you've got a pretty complete team as well with the Minnesota Twins. They won the AL Central last year, so they'll be fun to watch for sure. You've got the Chicago White Sox, who I think are starting to kind of hit their stride a little bit, or on schedule, on paper, should hit their stride. They've got Yasmani Grandal, who they brought in, Edwin Encarnacion, who they brought in. They brought in Dallas Keuchel. They brought in Gio Gonzalez. They brought in, they brought in a bunch of names that way. They've got Alex Colomé in the bullpen. They've got, they still have Eloy Jimenez. They have Yoan Moncada. They have Luis Robert, who's going to be coming up and supposed to be a stud. You've got Tim Anderson. So they've got a pretty stacked lineup as well. And I think this is the year they kind of start pulling it together. Now, whether or not they're going to contend and beat the Twins, I don't know. But they're definitely a team that is, when you think of who are the upper echelon teams in the Central, I think even though they haven't really gotten the opportunity to prove it, they've not been in the playoff hunt the last few years. I think this is the year they start to hit that stride. And when you take out the fact that they don't have to play, the other regions, as far as, they don't have games against the Astros, the A's, the Rays, the Yankees, all those other teams, they just have to play the Central. They just have to play. They'll play 40 games, including games against the Tigers, the Royals, the Indians. I like this lineup to beat any of those other lineups I just mentioned. So they'll be fun to watch. Then another team that, yeah, maybe in the past they haven't really, shown you that much, at least not recently, but the Cincinnati Reds, I think, are going to be really good. They've got Luis Castillo in the rotation. They've got Sonny Gray, who has just kind of found himself again. You've got Trevor Bauer. You've got Pedro Strop and Raisel Iglesias in the bullpen, which is going to be exciting. Then, as far as, I mean, there's bats everywhere with this team. They've got Joey Votto. They've got Mike Moustakas. They've got Nick Castellanos. They've got all these guys that are going to be really good. Eugenio's no, that Puig is actually not on. He failed his physical because he got COVID. And he was gonna sign with the Braves, and so he's now kind of in limbo again. So, but yeah, but you've got Eugenio Suarez. You've got a stacked lineup. I know I keep saying stacked lineup a lot, but this is for real. I mean, they've got a great team. Nick Senzel as well. They've got a whole bunch of great bats on this team, and I think this is the year that they pull it together too, just like the White Sox. I mean, yeah, they may not, if they would have had to play the NL West, the NL East, maybe it's a different story. But because they get to play the Pirates, the Royals, the Tigers, the Indians, I like them to
How
do
the
it.
Royals have fallen.
Yeah. Well, I
That's
mean, and the thing is, they weren't built. They were kind of built and run kind of like the Cubs were run, and or like the Cubs resurgence was run in the sense that they had all their young guys come together and they're going to become free agents all at the same time. They couldn't afford to keep them all, or they couldn't afford to keep them all. We all know we're kind of feeling differently about how how the owners are looked at now as far as spending money is concerned. But yeah, the Royals, I think, were built to make that like couple year run. But yeah, there's hardly anyone left save for maybe Alex Gordon from those old teams, which is pretty crazy. I think Greg Holland signed back there in the offseason, but he's a shell of his former self. So yeah, so I like the Reds. Then speaking of the Cubs, you've got the Chicago Cubs. They're gonna slot Kyle Schwarber as the DH. He's gonna absolutely mash. You've got Anthony Rizzo. You've got Javier Baez. You've got Chris Bryant. You've got Jason Hayward. You've got Ian Happ. You've got Wilson Contreras. Bats on bats on bats on bats. The pitching is the question mark. They do have Kyle Hendricks, Jose Quintana, Yu Darvish. If John Lester can at least have a bounce back season, you're excited for that. The bullpen, just who knows what's going to happen there? You do have Craig Kimbrell. It's not, Braves or even Red Sox Craig Kimbrell, but it is Craig Kimbrell nonetheless. We'll see what he does. They don't have Steve Cishek anymore. They don't have Pedro Strop anymore. The bullpen, which that kind of scares me. They do have some young talent in Rowan Wick. But we'll see. But the fact that they've got a solid staff, amazing bats, I think they're going to be contenders as far as the Central. When you stack these guys against the rest of the teams they're going to be playing, I think they're a contending team. And then you have the St. Louis Cardinals, who they have Jack Flaherty, they have Miles Michaelis, they've got Paul Goldschmidt, they've got Colton Wong, they've got Matt Carpenter, they've got some good guys. They also lost some talent. They lost Jose Martinez. They lost. They lost. Who did they lose? They lost Jose Martinez and Marcell Ozuna. I knew there was another big outfield bat that they lost. Which a lot of their guys, at least they have not shown at the major league level that they can match that power that Osuna and Martinez brought to the table, and that's what kind of worries me. Yeah, you still have Goldschmidt who can rake. Yachty's another year older. They don't have Jordan Hicks. Jordan Hicks has opted out of the season. So that's a big cog in their bullpen, although they still have Giovanni Gallegos and Andrew Miller. So all of those teams, I think, are going to compete, for the Central Crown. Then you've got spoiler teams. You've got the Brewers. Who knows what their staff looks like? They've got Brandon Woodruff. They've got Josh Hader. They've got some arms in between there, but those are the main two arms you hear about with the Brewers. You've got Christian Yelich. You've got Ryan Braun, who's going to be probably strictly the DH. But the Brewers, their window kind of opened and then kind of slammed shut again. So we'll see if they can be contender. I think they definitely have the ability to be, but we'll see. And then you've got the Indians, who they lose Corey Kluber. They still have Shane Bieber. They still have Mike Clevenger. Their bullpen, they've got Brad Hand. That's about it. They've got Francisco Lindor and Jose Martinez, which Martinez is looking to have a bounce back here. But I will say this about the Indians, and this is what kind of still keeps them above, because they're kind of like the Red Sox, where you could say they're a stellar team, but at the same time, because of Terry Francona for the Indians, it's kind of like having a legendary coach in basketball. Is it the most important thing? I mean, in the NBA, is it the most important thing? No, but if you have one, it can make a team that maybe shouldn't be, good. So like you see with the Spurs a lot, where the Spurs maybe aren't, the Tony Parker, Tim Duncan Spurs, but they still are contending because Greg Popovich is so doggone good. So that's why I think the Indians are still that notch ahead. And then the stellar teams, Royals, Tigers, Pirates. Again, you knew those names would be there. The Pirates are probably the best of those three. But again, those are three teams that the Central is just going to beat up on all season.
So yeah, when this Central region for me, I mean, obviously the Twins are contenders. I mean, defending AL Central champs. Um, you know, then obviously the Cardinals are up there as well for me. It's really tough not knowing and the Cubs. I also have the Cubs up there as contenders as well. It's because the Cubs always seem to be there until the very end, and then when they get to that play-in game, that's when they fall. But yeah, they're contenders at least. It's tough for me to put the White Sox and the Reds up there, just not fully, not really knowing much about what they look like. But because like what you said, Craig, with they get to play the Royals, the Tigers, the Pirates. They're only playing against the other Central Division, so that does put them up there for me. I'm going to put the Reds up there, but I'm not quite ready to put the White Sox up as contenders yet, just because the Reds, they have proven a little bit to they were kind of hovering around there a little bit last year too. Whereas
they've been the thorn in the side of a lot of teams in the NL.
Right, and eventually the thorn in the side, when it's the Reds, they tend to make a jump after a while. Like I said, in the East, the Blue Jays are typically the thorn in the side for like the Red Sox or whatever that may be. But the Reds know how to make that jump from thorn in the side to contender. They've done it in the past. So I'm going to keep the Reds there, but I'm going to put the White Sox down in the spoilers line with the Indians and the Brewers. But the Indians have the possibility of falling to the cellar. And that's mostly because they just seem to have struggled since they made that run to the World Series. They just haven't been the same Indians. I feel like they rode some really strong players, and then those players just fell off. So like I did in the East, I'm going to put a couple teams that I'm going to have a team like the Indians that are potential fallers to the cellar. And I have the White Sox down in spoilers. So I'm going to also have the White Sox on the verge of going up to contender. Whereas the Brewers are just going to hang pat. I feel like they're just going to be that team where you're like, oh, come on. Would you actually decide to be something? Like they're going to tease you a little bit and then they're going to, no, it's okay. And then they'll tease you a little bit again. And so I feel like that's kind of what the Brewers are going to be. Obviously the cellar, Royals, Tigers, Pirates, there's no explanation needed there. I feel like the Tigers are never going to get out of the cellar. The Pirates, I wish the Pirates were one of those teams that could get out of the cellar. They got close to being out of the cellar, and then they just sold the farm. They're one of those teams that they don't believe that they should be good or have good players for some reason. They're a frustrating team to me. And that's saying that because also, I mean, obviously their minor league affiliate is right here in Indianapolis, and I don't feel like their minor league team is typically one of the better minor league teams, but then they don't handle it. The Indians are good, like from the beginning of the year through about midway part of the year when the rosters expand. And then all of a sudden, all the good players on the Indians get called up to the Pirates for the Pirates to see what they have. And then the Indians don't have a chance to win anything in the playoffs. So it's just like they're just such a frustrating organization. So, but unfortunately, they're going to be stuck in the cellar.
Yeah, I agree with that. No much argument there. Yeah, it seems like the Indians always have good prospects, but they either trade them away or something happens along the way as far as the Indianapolis Indians to the Pirates. So yeah, no arguments there as far as those teams. Yeah, I mean it's completely fair to have like the White Sox as fringe and the Indians as fringe because yeah, it could go either way. But yeah, as far as the Brewers go, I think the Brewers are gonna like have a hot 2 weeks, then have a bad 2 weeks, then have a hot 2 weeks, then a bad 2 weeks. It's just gonna go back and forth. I'm right there with you. All right, finally, let's wrap up with the Western region. So I've got three contenders. I know I said this was the division or the region that I said was the toughest, but that's because there's so many doggone teams that I don't know where to put them, but they're going to be tough, and it's going to be tough to play these teams. I don't think there's a gimme game like really any other time unless you're playing shocker the cellar teams are Mariners and Giants. I'll just go ahead and get that out of the way. The Mariners and Giants don't have much going for them, but the rest I think are either going to be spoilers or contenders. My contenders are the Astros. You've got the you as far as pitching goes. You've got Justin Verlander. You've got Zach Greinke. Beyond that, starting pitcher's a little bit of a question mark for me there, but solid. You've got a bullpen that's got Ryan Presley and Roberto Osuna. Beyond that, again, you don't really know too much beyond that, but those are two solid pieces. And then, of course, you've got the bats. Now, I understand there's question marks about the bats because how well will they do when they don't have the trash can in the dugout? That's going to be the big. That's going to be the big question. But they still, I mean, that was, I think, the biggest gripe with the whole cheating scandal was the fact that they were a good enough team to not cheat, and they still cheated. They have Jose Altuve. They've got Yuli Gurriel. They've got Carlos Correa, Alex Bregman, Michael Brantley, George Springer. So they've got a good team, around them. They're going to be a tough team. They're going to be a tough out this season for sure. They're going to be a really good one. Then you've got the A's, which, you know, again, kind of like the Rays in the standpoint of do they have like that marquee player? No, but they've got really good players on their team. They've got they did take a little bit of a hit with one of their prospects, Lazardo, opting out. They do have Mike Fiers, Sean Manaea, on the pitching staff. Um, they do have, as far as the bullpen is concerned, I don't even. I mean, I know they've got Jake Diekman. Their bullpen's kind of a little bit suspect, but they always usually make it work. And then but their bats again solid. You've got Matt Olson, you've got Marcus Simeon, you've got Matt Chapman, you've got Chris Davis, you got Ramon Laureano. So you've got a lot of very talented bats in that lineup who are going to be tough. I think they're going to be right on the heels of the Astros, and they're going to be a good team this year. And then, of course, you've got the Dodgers. They make the monumental trade for Mookie Betts. Their pitching staff, you've still got Clayton Kershaw. You've still got Walker Buehler. You've got Kenley Jansen in your bullpen. They also brought in Blake Trinan. You have who
David Price.
Well, he opted out, so yeah, so he won't be there this season. But
And
yeah,
that's a bummer because David Price is a guy that he struggles as the season goes on
yeah.
in a long season, but in a shortened season, I feel like David Price could have had a really good year.
And to boot, he's an AL pitcher going to the NL, which I do like to keep an eye on that because especially if you're a fantasy baseball, guru like myself, you kind of keep track of that because in the past, now this year it wouldn't have mattered because you have the DH all over the place. But when you go from facing a DH to facing the weekend lineups of having the pitcher spot up, it tends to work out for the former AL pitchers. But yeah, so you've got those guys pitching. You've got, and then of course, I mean, all over the place. You've got bats. You've got bats on bats on bats on bats on bats on bats on bats. You've got Cody Bellinger, Justin Turner, Mookie Betts. Jock Peterson, Corey Seager, Kike Hernandez. Pretty much everywhere across the board, you've got a talented roster, talented bats. They're a team that is primed for a World Series run. These spoiler teams, I have five. Count them, five spoiler teams that I think could put something together. You got the Angels, which yes, I understand. Their pitching staff is Julio Teheran, Dylan Bundy. They've got some guys who have got some big question marks. I understand the bullpen. We'll see. They've got some good pieces. They've got Cam Bedrosian, who's solid. But then let's look at the lineup. You've got Trout. You've got Rendon. You've got Andrelton Simmons. You've got Justin Upton. You've got Shohei Ohtani. You've got some very talented players on this roster that I think are going to make a heck of a season out of this. Then you've got the Rangers, who have Lance Lynn, Mike Minor, Corey Kluber as your pitching staff. Who if Minor, all three are looking to have either continue from a bounce back season last year or have their own bounce back season this year. And Corey Kluber, who is coming off injury, the bullpen is solid. You've got Jose Leclerc. You've got Jesse Chavez. You've got some good arms there. Then you've got Joey Gallo. You've got Elvis Andrus. You've got some really good players on the Texas Rangers as well. And the Rangers, for a time, were in the hunt last year of the last wild card spot. So they're going to be improved. They're going to take some games away from the other, contenders. Then you've got the Diamondbacks, who have Ketel Marte. They just added Starling Marte. They've got a really good lineup as well. On the front of that is going to be those two guys at the top there, Marte and Starling. Then you've got Archie Bradley in the bullpen. They've got now Mike Leake opted out as well, but you just added Mad Bum. That's another team that's going to be that was before the season started. Was supposed to be a team that was going to contend, and I think even in a shortened season they'll be good. Then you've got the Padres, who are improved. The Padres are a lot like the Blue Jays in the sense that they've got good guys like Fernando Tatis. They've got guys, in that lineup: Eric Hosmer, Manny Machado. They've got, their starting pitching is starting to come around a little bit. Their bullpen is filthy. They've got Craig Stammen. They've got Kirby Yates. So they're going to be another tough team. And then the Rockies, their pitching is a big question mark. They got Herman Marquez, who's good. They've got, if Wade Davis can maybe recapture some of his magic from years past, he's going to be solid out of the bullpen. But you've got Trevor Story, you've got Nolan Arenado, you've got David Dahl, you've got Daniel Murphy, you've got just so many bats in that lineup that can be good. So there's a lot of teams. There's only really three contenders, but the spoilers, are they on the same level as the contenders? No, not at all. But at the same time, they're good enough to take games away from the contenders, which is why I think that region is going to be so crazy to watch.
Yeah, I agree. When you look at your contenders, the two that stand out the most are the Astros and the Dodgers, obviously. I don't think the Astros are really going to miss too much of a beat with the cheating scandal. I mean, they still were loaded with talent. Looking at your contenders, though, Astros, Dodgers, I think the A's are one of the teams for me that they're going to be a contender because they typically are a contender, whether that's for the division or for a wild card spot year in and year out. They always seem to be just right there. But I feel like they're going to be one of those teams that this year they could potentially bump down to the spoilers line. And in the spoilers, I actually have the Angels, the Rangers, the D-backs, and the Rockies. I'm not 100% sold on the Padres because I feel like if things start going well for the Padres, they're going to be like, oh, this isn't right. They're going to blow it up and try to make some trade and then some big name will be on the move. They just don't know how. They're kind of like the Pirates, except they're a tier up from the Pirates. But I feel like the Angels have that possibility of bumping up to the contenders line just because of how good offensively they are. And also when you have one of the best players in baseball on your roster, that they have the ability to kind of just take over and help get the team where they need them to be. And so down in the cell, I am going to have the Padres though in the spoilers section, just because, like I said, they're a tier above like the Pirates as far as how the organization is run, but it's just kind of, they're maddeningly frustrating. But they're going to be that team that could potentially drop down to the cellar for me. And then the Mariners and the Giants as well. It's so weird. The Giants, man, at one point in time, that team was just stellar every other year. And it was usually, I think wasn't it odd years that they were always really good? Even years. This would have been an even year. Come on.
2010, 2012, and 2014.
This is supposed to be one of the years that the Giants can win the World Series. But, they haven't done that in a long time, or even been close to that in a while. So, but the Padres are one of those teams that could drop down to the cellar. The Mariners are always just an intriguing team to me. They have the ability, I feel like, to bump up to potentially to the spoilers, but it's just tough. The Giants are definitely down in the cellar for me.
Yeah, there was a couple of years where the Mariners had like King Felix and James Paxton, where they could have, been something. They had Nelson Cruz, but yeah, they're just kind of, yeah. they did start 13-2 last year, and in a 16-game season, if they can recapture that, who knows? That might screw some things up and
that would bump them up to the spoilers,
right? But we'll see. Now it is finally time for our predictions. Before we do that, as you can see, if you're watching the video portion, our socials are down at the bottom. So if you want to follow us, go ahead and check out there. And also, if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, go ahead and subscribe there. Crash Course Podcast. We're going to be doing the podcast live every Monday now. And if it's going to be a different date, we'll announce that, or a different time, we'll announce that. But we're going to record the podcast live every week. So get excited for that. Also, coming in August, there's going to be a new video series coming out every week. It's going to be called Memory Lane, which, if you guys remember, we rewatched the 2018 Indy 500. It's going to be under that format where we watch old games and that kind of stuff and react to them and that kind of thing. So we're really excited to roll out this new content, not only streaming the podcast live every week, but also getting you guys some new videos and stuff like that as well. So be excited for that. So if you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and subscribe now, because it's going to be awesome. We're at 9 currently. We got one during the podcast, so thank you guys for subscribing. And then, of course, you can follow us at Crash Course FM on Twitter, Crash Course Podcast on Facebook, and you can go to anchor.fm/Crash Course to hear us, or every Tuesday, or you could also we can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever podcasts can be heard. So let's get into the predictions. For the AL East, I've got the Yankees and the Braves. The Yankees was an easy choice.
Just the East. You said AL East.
Yeah. For the AL East, it's the Yankees. For the NL East, it's the Braves. So Yankees wasn't a tough choice for me there. The Braves, did I kind of think maybe Nationals, maybe something else? But no, the Braves are just too solid for me, so I'm keeping it with the Atlanta Braves. For the Central region, AL, it's going to be the Twins. Not too much different from, a lot of my picks are not too different from what we saw last year. The Twins, I think, are really solid. And then I have the Reds for the NL Central. A lot of people are picking the Cubs. A lot of people are picking the Cardinals. But I really think this is the year that the Reds really break out. Like I said, in the past they've been the thorn in the side of a lot of teams, and I think this is the year they've got enough firepower where they can, really make a solid run to the playoffs. And then in the Western region, I've got the Astros. I thought about the A's for a minute, and then I was like, I think the Astros are just too good. And then, without a doubt, it's the Dodgers. The Dodgers are a level ahead in the NL, or the Dodgers are a beat ahead of everybody here. And I think that they are going to be your NL West champions. Wild card teams for me. So I've got two that are repeat AL, the Nationals and the NL. But the new ones are both from the same city. For the AL, it's the White Sox, and for the NL, it's the Cubs. Do I think the Cubs are good enough to win the Central? Yes, but I think they will get that. They will get a wild card spot. Now, the thing that will be interesting is if they host the wild card game or if they're on the road. The Cubs have played in 3 wild card games. The 2 games they played on the road against the Nationals and against no, not against Nationals, against the Pirates. And who else did they play on the road? They've played. Have they only played one? Maybe they've only played one. Maybe I thought the Nationals won. They originally played, but basically the one they played on the road, they won. The one they played at home, they lost. So, so we'll see what happens there. Um, yeah, the Nationals was the NLDS Game 5. I got that confused for a second. But it was a winner-go-home game on the road. They won it. So those are my wild card teams, and yeah, the White Sox. I think they make that leap this year. It's kind of like the Reds. I think they have a good enough roster where they jump up. And then, like I said, I look at the other teams. Like I think, the West is so good that it's gonna be, it's gonna they're gonna there's gonna be so much of teams coming up and taking away from other teams that it's just gonna be kind of crazy. But I think the West is gonna be kind of left out of the picture because I think the Central is light enough to where 2 teams can get in. I think the East is light enough where 2 teams can get in, and I think the West is just going to beat the living crap out of each other. So we'll see what happens there. But those are my predictions. And then after you go, B Scott, we'll get into the playoffs.
All right. So for me in the East, I have for the AL East, I have the New York Yankees. I mean, it's pretty obvious that that team is just flat out stacked. And then in the NL East, I'm actually going with the defending World Series champs, the Washington Nationals. You know, with going into a season where there's so much unknowns, I'm just kind of sitting back and going, you know what? Prove me wrong. You're still champions until proven otherwise. So I have to go with the Nationals based on kind of that. Just not knowing too much about the way this season is going to unfold. So that is what I have for the East. In the Central, the AL Central, I have the Minnesota Twins. I think that's kind of like up there with the Yankees. That's just a given. Mostly because, I mean, man, that the Central is just not as deep, especially the AL Central. The AL Central is there for the Twins just to basically run away with. And then the NL Central, I'm going with the St. Louis Cardinals because it is potentially a potential 3-team race. I just kind of feel like the Cardinals are one of the more consistent teams in Major League Baseball, and I think consistency like that is going to be what prevails. And then out west, in the AL West, I have the Houston Astros because, well, I mean, cheating or no cheating, they still are very, very good. And then obviously in the NL West, I mean, it's the Dodgers. So that's a fairly given one as well. For a lot of these divisions, it does seem like it is pretty. I would say for the East and the AL East and the AL West or the NL West, it is the easiest. I feel like to pick the division winners just because the Yankees and the Dodgers are head and heels above everybody else in their divisions. There's some teams that can nip at the heels and potentially take them down, but I just don't feel like there's anybody else that can take them down from within their own divisions to win the division. The wild card teams I have the Tampa Bay Rays. They are one of those teams that can potentially dethrone the Yankees. And then I also have the Chicago White Sox. Yeah, I know I said they were a borderline contender team. They're one of those teams that can fall back and forth. But based off of what they have to play this year, it does give them a great opportunity to get into the playoffs as a wild card team this year. On the NL side of things, I have the Atlanta Braves. Obviously, the Braves and the Nationals could honestly be interchangeable, whether they're division winner or the wild card team. So that one, they definitely get in. And then the other one in the NL wild card is the Cincinnati Reds. I just feel like this could be a good year for them. So they could have some special moments this season.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's not. It's horrible because it's not horrible, but it's kind of a bummer. Mostly because the Cincinnati Reds are they're so close to driving distance for us here in Indiana and not having any fans allowed in the stands, when they
Right.
have a good season, it's kind of a bummer that, can't just load up the car and drive down to Cincy for a Saturday afternoon baseball.
Right. Especially, in a situation where they would have been improved, like a game between them and the Cubs would have been, a really big game. Anybody in the NL Central would have been a pretty big game. So yeah, absolutely, absolutely hear you on that. So let's go ahead and get into our playoff predictions. Round by round here. Wild card for me, wild card round, it's going to be the Rays over the White Sox for me. I just think the Rays are just that good. The Rays are a contender for the AL pennant this year. I feel like the White Sox aren't quite there yet, so I think the Rays win the wild card game for the second straight season. And then I've got the Cubs getting the second wild card game, or the second wild card spot. Going on the road, which they've done before, and won in winner go home games. I picked them as the second team because I really want them to play on the road because of the fact that they've been better on the road in clinching games recently. So I've got the Cubs over the Nationals. I think the Nationals are a better team, but I think in a one game playoff, I trust the bats of the Cubs more than I do the bats of the Nationals, and the pitching staff for the Cubs is good enough to, I think, take on the Scherzers and the Corbins of the world in the Strasburg. So those are the teams that I'm advancing. Then the division series, I've got the Yankees are going to be the one seed. They're going to take on the Rays in the division series. I think this goes five. I think this is going to be a really hotly contested series where you're not really going to know if the Yankees are going to pull it out or not. I think, because these two teams are very familiar with each other, both in division and this season playing only a short amount of time. I think it's going to be a close one. But I think the Yankees win. And then in the other division series, Twins versus Astros. I've got the Twins beating the Astros. The Astros, again, I think this is the Twins have a lineup that can compete with the Houston Astros, and then I think the pitching for the Twins is deeper, especially in the bullpen, which in a playoff series can be really key. So I've got the Twins over the Astros. As far as the NL is concerned, Dodgers are going to be the overall one seed in the NL. It's going to be Dodgers versus the Cubs. I've got the Dodgers winning there and advancing. And the Braves versus the Reds. I've got the Braves beating the Reds again. This is a season where the Reds are much improved, but I think the Braves roster is just better, especially now that they've got an improved bullpen. So I'm going with the Braves over the Reds. So that makes an NLCS or the championship series for the AL side of the Yankees and the Twins, an NLCS of the Dodgers and the Braves. And I've got the Yankees over the Twins. The Twins have always seemed every time they get up against the Yankees, it seems like they just are right there. It's kind of like the Heat and the Pacers back in the day, where they're kind of on the same level, but every time they play in a series, it's always going to be the Heat. Where in this instance, it's always going to be the Yankees, and so the Yankees win and advance to go to the World Series. And then Dodgers versus the Braves. I don't think there's anybody stopping the Dodgers in the National League this season. And so they're going to win in advance. So that sets up a World Series. A World Series that everyone I think can kind of exhale. We don't have anything crazy. We don't have the Royals and the Pirates in the World Series this season because it's a shortened season.
I
We don't
wish.
have. I mean that would be insane.
COVID
Um,
takes over all the top teams, and the Red Sox come out of nowhere and win the World Series over the Pittsburgh Pirates.
exactly. Nothing out of the ordinary. You might have had the Yankees and Dodgers even before spring training started. So this is going to be the World Series, and in a season, I mentioned it before, in a season where the last few seasons for the Dodgers have been 2016, the Dodgers losing the NLCS to the Cubs. The Cubs, a Cubs team that goes on to win the World Series. In 2017, the Dodgers are beat by a Astros team that it comes out later that they've been cheating. It's a cheating scandal for them. Then they run into the buzzsaw the following year in the 2018 Boston Red Sox, a team that I think they won 108 games that season, insanity. And then the following year they play in the NLDS, the upstart Nationals, who you never would have thought the Nationals were going to be contenders. They were 19-31, but then they're basically a Cinderella story. They come out and they beat the Dodgers. The Dodgers have just not been able to catch a break, and in a season where it's condensed, they can get the most. Not I don't want to say scrutiny, but for the most part, you're going to have it's a shortened season. It's kind of a crazy year, and in one of those seasons, the Dodgers get their world championship finally. They win the World Series. It's going to be a season where even if you want to take it away from them, which I've kind of B Scott over time and
You
over
do.
list, you've talked me off the ledge a little bit about being like this is a farce because it's not. I don't think it's a farce anymore. I think it is going to be a fun season because I think you're right. I think I was looking at a shortened season like, well, normally it's three times the size of what this is of it is that it is this season. How is it going to compare? But no, you're just throwing all these teams into the pennant chase and just seeing what happens, and they're all going to treat it the same way. So I think that's a good way to look at it. And so I think that's why you're going to see the teams you're normally used to seeing in the playoffs. I think the Dodgers win the World Series. They win it over the Yankees. The Dodgers are World Series champions.
All right. So let's start off with the wild card here for me. In the AL wild card, I have the Rays over the White Sox. I'm just going to kind of go through. I've given enough explanations on these teams, and this is kind of how I just see it playing out. The Rays over the White Sox in the AL wild card. In the NL wild card, I have the Braves over the Reds. So now we move on to the divisional series. I have the Yankees being the number 1 seed in the AL. I mean, obviously, anybody else want to step up and try to take that from them too? I didn't think so. So I have the Yankees over the Rays. That one's going to be a fun one. I will go into this one a little bit. I think this one's going to be a really, really fun one in the fact that, these two teams will have played each other quite a bit in a short time frame. And the Rays are one of the teams that I feel like have a chance to, take down the Yankees. On the other ALDS series, I have the Astros over the Twins. That one, it could be another hard fought battle as well. I feel like these are going to be some really hard fought battles in the ALDS. They're going to be close series. I feel like maybe even the Astros and Twins could be closer than the Yankees and the Rays. So on the NL side of things, in the NLDS, I have the Dodgers over the Braves. This is one series that actually gives the Dodgers a scare early on. And this is a Dodgers team that's going to be really, really, really good. But this is the biggest hurdle that I feel like they're going to have to get over to get to the World Series. So on the other side of the NL, I have the Cardinals over the Nationals. This one was a kind of a tough one for me, mostly because, the Nationals, like I said, you're defending champs. You're still champs until you're not. But I just feel like there's some question marks. Even, I feel like the Nationals last year really they got hot at the right time. They played strong at the right time. Can they recreate that magic for the full postseason this time around? I just don't think so. And I feel like the consistency that I spoke on about the Cardinals earlier, in the ALCS, I end up having the Yankees over the Astros. I don't think this one is going to be as close as people want to think. The Yankees they're just really, really good. But if there is a team that can slow down the Yankees, it is the Astros. I do worry just a little bit about the Astros pitching compared to the Yankees. So that there's some concern there. In the NLCS, I have the Dodgers over the Cardinals. Like I said, the biggest hurdle for the Dodgers to get to the World Series in my rundown would be the Braves. I don't think the Cardinals have what it takes to uproot the Dodgers. I don't think many teams have what it takes to uproot the Dodgers this year. So that takes me to the World Series. We have the New York Yankees and the Los Angeles Dodgers. This is the dream come true matchup for Major League Baseball in a shortened season. Two of their biggest marketable teams in their largest markets that they have. This is exactly what they dream of when it comes to making money. But the Bronx Bombers do not get the job done. the Los Angeles Dodgers ultimately come out victorious over the New York Yankees. Mookie Betts still can say, "Who's your daddy?" to New York, and the Dodgers win the World Series.
So we agree. B. Scott and I
We agree.
agree on our World Series champion. We both have the Dodgers. We both have the same matchup too, which is pretty crazy. The Yankees and the Dodgers.
I feel like with there's so much uncertainty in the season. The biggest thing that is certain is the fact that the Yankees and the Dodgers both have stacked lineups and have what it takes to get to the World Series and win a World Series.
Yeah.
So I think with so much uncertainty, it's kind of the easy way out to go this way. But, so much has changed since even spring training. And with players opting out and just the unknowns of everything, you just kind of have to go with the easy way out right now, I suppose.
Right. No, I'm with you 100%. Before we go, we do want to do our all decade team, and so I'm really excited to get into that for the 2010s for Major League Baseball. And one thing I noticed is that I consulted stats. I looked at some other places for jumping off points, and this is probably my list. I've noticed, especially with a game that's as statistically driven as baseball, you're not going to get a whole lot of deviation from what you're trying to see. Some of the other experts pick. But this is going to be my team. We'll go right through it here. Starting off at the catcher position, it was tough. It was between two. It was between Yadier Molina for the St. Louis Cardinals, and it was between Buster Posey for the San Francisco Giants. And I originally said Buster Posey. I said, hey, because I'm kind of going off the same criteria that I went off of for the NFL, where I was like, there's three kind of things. Like, what have you done in the league statistically? Where did you match up that way? And then, how many titles have you won? Which is not all about titles, it's not the NBA, but at the same time, those are important. And then basically, you know, uh, are you like how well known? Like, not really well known, but you know what I mean. There's like that, intangible, face of the franchise kind of deal as well. How much have you meant to the game as a whole? So for me, Yachty's good on that point. As far as being that way, but I was like, Buster Posey was won 3 titles, all that kind of stuff. He's been a bit dominant catcher in the league, and then I was like, well, but statistically, Yadier Molina might be a better catcher. And, when you look at catchers that have been kind of icons this decade, it's between him and Posey. So maybe I lean Yachty a little bit more because we're not championship driven. But then I did look at the stats, and Buster Posey, I mean, has, an NL MVP. He's got he's got, silver sluggers, gold gloves. He's got rookie of the year honors. He's been to all-star games. I mean, Yachty has as well, but Yachty doesn't have an MVP. Yachty doesn't have that same kind of record book to go along with how statistically good he's been. So for me, it's Buster Posey, 100%. Then at first base, this is really the one position that I was like, I didn't know what to do because originally I wanted to say Anthony Rizzo because I looked at first baseman that won World Series. It's been a whole different names. You throw like Eric Hosmer in there. You throw Steve Pearson, Mitch Moreland in there from the Red Sox. You throw different guys in Yuli Gurriel from the Astros. I was like, none of these guys,
Steve
you know,
Pierce, there's a name.
yeah, and none of these guys really jump off the board for me. And I was like, so is it Anthony Rizzo by default? I mean, he's been good statistically. He's made All Star games. But I mean, you look at the decade that Joey Votto. I mean, you want to talk about consistency? Joey Votto has been so consistent. He won the 2010 MVP. He's been to All Star games. He's won Silver Sluggers and Gold Gloves. And he's been just so consistent. He not only has consistently hit for power, he's consistently hit for average as well. I know last year he kind of fell off a little bit, but that doesn't take away from a heck of a decade that he has so easily. First baseman is Joey Votto for me. Second base, might raise some well, I don't know if it'll raise some eyebrows, but definitely, I mean, you could have gone a couple different ways here. I just went with Jose Altuve. I mean, he's got the 2015 MVP. I think is the year that he won MVP. He's got four 200 hit seasons. He's consistently and a lot of and the thing is too, he was again back to the point about the Astros. They were a good team before the whole scandal broke. I mean, in 2015 helped get that team to the playoffs. I mean, he was hitting well before because remember that whole thing got the whole videotape hitting the trash can. That whole started in 2017. I mean, this was a good team in 2015. So, Jose Altuve was a big part of that. So he was an easy choice for me. I mean, there's a couple different ways you could have gone, but Jose Altuve is the second baseman for me. Third base, another spot where I was like, could I go Chris Bryant? I could go Adrian Beltre. I could go a couple of different ways. I could try to shoehorn the Cubs in there somehow with Bryant, all that kind of stuff. Or do I go Manny Machado? But you look at Nolan Arenado. Nolan Arenado has been in the season or has been in the league for 7 seasons, and all 7 seasons he's won the Gold Glove at third base. He's made All Star games. Has he been an MVP? No, and Chris Bryant has, and has also been a Rookie of the Year. But at the same time, I mean, you want a guy who not only hits for average, hits for power, but also is the best defensive third baseman every single year he's been in the league. Nolan Arenado. So, it turned out to be a much easier choice for me there. Shortstop was tough because there's not guys at shortstop that have been in the league. They've been in the league for the first half of the 2010s and whatever they did like after 2015 they tailed off, or they've been in the league since 2015 and been good since. I thought about Javier Baez, but he's only had really the one season where he contended for All-Star. I mean, he's been good other seasons, but he just had the one in 2018 where he contended for MVP. MVP. I know I said All-Star. I meant MVP. And then you've got Troy Tulowitzki, who had a great first half of the 2010s, but he tailed off. I ultimately went with Francisco Lindor, who has been one of the faces of baseball, really, since he's come up into the league. We talk about a lot of the young shortstops. He's definitely been, one that's at the top of the list in the league. He's won Gold Gloves, he's got 2 Silver Sluggers. And he's only been in the major since 2015, so he's incredible. He's, arguably the best shortstop in baseball at the moment. So I went with Francisco Lindor to wrap up the infield. Then for the outfield, I've got, Mike Trout, obviously, MVP, Silver Slugger, 5-tool athlete, best player on the planet right now. So easy choice for the outfield. I I didn't know you bring up Mookie Betts, and you know he's also won an MVP. But I was like, he's only been in the league since like 2014. So I mean, he only was around for half the decade. I mean, you could easily slot him in for the 2020s as a player of the decade. But I was like, you know what? He's still done enough. He helped put that Red Sox team on his back to win the World Series. He's won, the 2018 MVP. He's arguably one of the best players in baseball right now. I mean, when you're one of the best players in baseball, you're gonna get touted as one of the best. And then rounding out the outfield, I've got Andrew McCutchen. Andrew McCutchen is Larry Fitzgerald to me as far as does he have the accolades? Yes, but he's also done it over a longer period of time. You could throw in Giancarlo Stanton, but he's mainly been, power. He's been good, but he's what he brings to the table is power. Bryce Harper, I think if he was, he does have the 2015 MVP, but if he had lived up to the hype and even the slightest, he's been good, he's been solid, but and I know he was kind of compared to Trout, and I think that's kind of what takes away from what he has done. But I don't know. Bryce Harper was kind of fringe for me, and then I thought about Jose Bautista and what he was able to do. But I was like, again, like, yes, Jose Bautista may have done maybe a smidgen more than Andrew McCutchen, but again, tailed off towards the end of the decade. Whereas Andrew McCutchen has been good since like 2012, 2013 when he really kind of broke into the league. So Had to go with Andrew McCutchen there as my final outfielder. DH Nelson Cruz. He's mashed no matter where he's been. He's played for the Mariners. He's played for the Rangers. He's played for the Orioles. He's played for the Twins now, and he's done nothing but just crush baseballs over the outfield wall. Easy choice for Nelson Cruz there. And then we're only going to pick two pitchers, one starter, one reliever. For me, starter, you could go a bunch of different ways. You can go Scherzer, you can go Maddon, you can go Blanky, you can go Sale. For me, I'm going to go Justin Verlander. And it's because again, you look at the total body of work of the decade. Yeah, he had a bad kind of 2015 to 16, but he has been just incredible. I mean, you talk about a triple crown that he's won. He's won a triple crown. He's won Cy Young. He's won MVP. He's been to All Star games. He's won a World Series. I mean, the man has done it all. And basically at the point where you could have said, like, hey, maybe he's starting to tail off a little bit. He recaptured his magic at the end of 2016, carried that into a 2017 World Championship. Because again, it was the hitters that were cheating; it wasn't the pitchers. So you can take everything as legit there. And then he's done nothing but dominate ever since that point. He's got another no hitter under his belt, 3 in total. The guy has just been an absolute unit. And then rounding out my team of the decade, I've got Aroldis Chapman as my pitcher because, again, over the course of the entire decade, he's been filthy. You could say Kimbrel, but again, Kimbrel kind of tailed off. Jansen kind of, sparked up around 2015 and kind of had a rough year last year, so he hasn't been as complete as Chapman. Neither has Kimbrel. You look at the top 3 relievers of the decade, those are the 3, but I think the one that's been the most complete and dominant is Aroldis Chapman. So that's why I'm picking him as my closer of the decade. So rounding out the team, I've got Buster Posey at catcher, Joey Votto at first, Jose Altuve at second, I've got Nolan Arenado at third, Francisco Lindor at short. My outfield is Mike Trout, Mookie Betts, and Andrew McCutchen. Then DH Nelson Cruz, starter Justin Verlander, and my reliever is Aroldis Chapman.
All right, so for me, Buster Posey's my catcher as well. I mean, this guy was an all-star 2012, 2013, then 2015 to 2018. He was a 2010 Rookie of the Year, 2012 MVP, Silver Slugger in 2012, 14, 15, and 17, and won a Gold Glove in 2016. I mean, he boasts a career batting average of .302. I mean, that just anything over 3. That's pretty impressive. With 140 home runs and 673 RBIs. I mean, he's just been one of the most consistent players at that position. I feel like first base, very similar to Craig. I have Joey Votto. All-star appearances for him in 2010 through 2013, and then again in 17 and 18. He won the 2010 MVP and also won a Gold Glove that year as well. Career batting average of .306 with 231 career home runs and 759 RBIs. I mean, he's just been a machine, and he's going to continue that on. So that's awesome. Second base, I have Robinson Cano. He was an all-star in 2010 through 2014 and again in 2016 and 17. He won Silver Slugger Awards 2010 through 2013, won Gold Gloves in both 2010 and 2012, a career batting average of an even 300, 237 career home runs and 878 RBIs. So, he knows how to hit the ball pretty well. Third base, I have Josh Donaldson, MVP in 2015, all-star appearances in 2014 through 2016, Silver Sluggers in 15 and 16, career batting average of .272. I know it's below the 3 threshold, but he knows how to. He's a power hitter with 219 career home runs and 645 RBIs. And also, if you look at the fact that Josh Donaldson a lot of times has played for just kind of middle of the pack teams, he's had a pretty impressive career. I mean, the year that he won MVP, I mean, the Blue Jays were actually really good that season. So that's something right there. Just the fact that he's never been on a true title contender, but yet has been one of the best players year after year. Shortstop, I have Troy Tulowitzki. He had all-star appearances 2010 and 11, and again in 2013 through 2015. He won Silver Sluggers in 2010 and 2011, plus Gold Gloves those years as well. He boasts a career batting average of 293 with 160 career home runs and 537 RBIs. By the way, this team that I'm naming, if this was an actual team, I feel like they would win the World Series just about every year. Because I didn't, when I put the team together, I didn't initially know we were doing only one pitcher, one starting pitcher and one relief pitcher. So I actually built like a full team, but I'm only going to give one pitcher, one starter. And
remember, Donaldson and Tulowitzki were on the same team in the Blue Jays for a while.
True. That is true. So let's move on now to the outfield. The first one, this one's kind of a no-brainer. Is Mike Trout. He's been around much longer than you think. I feel like Mike Trout, you just started hearing about him not all that long ago, but I mean, he's been around since 2011. I mean, that's 9 years. That's a pretty long time. In that span, he has been an all-star every year but one. 2012 through 2019, he's been named to the All-Star team. He was a 2012 Rookie of the Year. He's won multiple MVPs in 2014, 2016, and again in 2019. Silver Sluggers, I mean, pretty much almost every season he gets a Silver Slugger. The only year that he has not was the only years he has not is 2011, and when it was kind of a shortened season for him. He wasn't considered his full rookie year, by the way, then. But 2011 and 2017, those are the only years that he has not won a Silver Slugger. So that's pretty impressive. He right now currently boasts a career batting average of .305, 285 career home runs, and 752 RBIs and counting for him. This one this next one for me is a little bit more of a homer pick, I guess, and not like a Red Sox homer pick, but a local homer pick. Andrew McCutchen. He came up through the Indianapolis Indians and everything. He's been named an All-Star 2011 through 2015. He won the MVP in 2013. This guy, I mean, he's just been a very consistent, solid career. He's never been like a guy that's going to crush the ball. But even though I say that, he has won Silver Sluggers in 2012 through 2015. And then he also won a Gold Glove in 2012. He is kind of nearing the back end of his career a little bit, but he's still one of those players that I love watching him play. He just plays the game of baseball so well. He boasts a career batting average of 286, 221 career home runs, 765 RBIs. Now here's the homer in me a little bit. I can't really say that anymore, but Mookie Betts. Got to have him in my outfield. Mostly not because of his defensive abilities, but because of just being an all-around player. If I was going just off of trying to build a team with the defensive abilities, obviously Jackie Bradley Jr. would have been on there. But Mookie is one of those guys that you're going to want to build your team around a guy like this. I mean, he's young, and he seems just to get better every year. He won MVP in 2018. He's been named to the All-Star team in 2016 through 2019. He's won Gold Gloves those same years. He also received Silver Sluggers in 2016, 2018, and 2019. Currently, he boasts a career batting average of 301 with 139 career home runs and 470 RBIs. My DH, I am going with Nelson Cruz at DH. Nelson Cruz has had himself a rather lengthy and a rather nice career hitting the ball. All-Star 2013 through 2015, and again 2017 and 18. He's won Silver Sluggers in 15, 17, and 19. He currently boasts a career batting average of 281 with 346 career home runs and 961 RBIs. So like I said, he's made a nice career of just smashing the ball. I am going with my starting pitcher. I am going with Justin Verlander as well, mostly because the thing that stands out with him the most is the fact that he did win the MVP in 2011. And that is very uncommon to see a starting pitcher win the MVP. But he was just so dominant in 2011. Obviously, he won the MVP and the Cy Young that year. He won another Cy Young in 2019, All-Star appearances in 2010 through 2013. And then he had those few down years there in between, where even the Tigers had some struggles during those years. And then he got back into the All-Star game again in 2018 and 2019. Currently, he boasts a career ERA of 3.1, with 160 career wins to 86 career losses. So, Justin Verlander is one of those guys that for a while early on you didn't want to see him. Then it went through a period of time where you're like, okay, maybe he's lost it. But now that he's back on a winning team again, and just, he's a proven winner. And sometimes when you are a proven winner, you're on a team that just is struggling to win, no matter what you do, that can bring you down a little bit. And that's what happened with Verlander. I mean, he was stuck on a Tigers team that was just going nowhere, and that can be mentally taxing. So to get into a new situation with the Houston Astros and them winning and everything, that really kind of rejuvenated his career. And I was really happy to see that for him. And then my relief pitcher, I'm actually going with Craig Kimbrell. When you look at like championships and everything, Craig Kimbrell has one, and so does Aroldis Chapman. Well, I'm going with Kimbrell based off of statistics, mostly because Kimbrell didn't look the greatest in the World Series with the Red Sox. A matter of fact, they decided to not use him in the deciding game. They went with Chris Sale instead to close out the game against the Dodgers. So that kind of says something about where he was in, where he kind of stood at that point in time. But he does have 346 career saves and an ERA of 2.09, whereas compared to Aroldis Chapman only has 273 career saves. They're pretty much equal in age and how long they've been playing. Aroldis Chapman's career ERA is 2.24. So I went with Kimbrell because Kimbrell does have more than just a fire pitch. And I say that about Aroldis Chapman because Aroldis Chapman, his thing was he came into the league and was throwing over 100 miles an hour, which is very, very impressive. So it came down to those two. When I said I filled out a full roster here, Aroldis Chapman is on my list, but just when I have to pick one, I'm going to go with Craig Kimbrell, mostly because of just those statistics that I mentioned of the career saves and the career ERA.
All of those names that you listed, are names that you could easily interchange them with mine, and you would still have a stacked team. So definitely no wrong choices there. Those are guys that I grappled with as well. So just a lot of fantastic players that are, even some of which are going to be fun to watch even as we enter a new decade as well. So really excited to see that.
I even looked at a guy like Mariano Rivera. I know it was early in the decade, but you have to remember those players also from early in the decade. Right. Yeah, it was on the back end of his career, and maybe he wasn't as dominant as he was in the earlier part of the 2000s. But, he put up some impressive numbers in a short amount of time since 2010, even as his career was starting to decline.
Absolutely. Well, that will do it for this week's edition of the Crash Course Podcast. We thank everybody who watched on YouTube in this initial live broadcast. We also thank you guys for listening on Anchor as well. Remember, you can follow us at Crash Course FM on Twitter, Crash Course Podcast on Facebook, Crash Course or Anchor.fm/Crash Course on Anchor. You can hear us every Tuesday wherever podcasts can be heard, on Google Podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You name it, we're going to be there. And then, our YouTube channel, if you're listening to it on the audio portion, head on over there. We are going to broadcast live when we record every Monday, so make sure you guys are there. because we want to take this new adventure with you guys, and we're excited to bring it to you. So head on over there to Crash Course Podcast on YouTube and hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, so that way whenever we do go live. So that will do it for this week. Next week we're going to do the same thing, but for the NBA as they get set to go in the bubble. So that will be a fun thing to get into.